told me that you have been doing like ghostwriting services through the last years, I think. It was over the last 2 years.
Yeah, I started. I think I just really always wanted to get into writing books. I think
Hmm.
that when I was in so not really in high school, but just when I just finished high school and was going through university and stuff, I think it was
Hmm.
like it seemed like the pinnacle of achievement, right? To like write a book and like all these famous
Hmm.
authors, and so I think I just wanted to get into that world.
Hmm.
I hadn't really read many books at that point, but I was starting to. Like I just started to like listen to podcasts, and every time they seem to be asking the guests like, "What's your favorite books?" or "What's your most impactful books?" and like all the super successful people had these books that they were always referring to. So it just seemed like something that I was missing. So I wanted to get into that. So when I was like maybe like 21 or 22, I did my first book, which was interviewing a bunch of successful entrepreneurs, all
Hmm.
from my city. They all went to the same school as I did, so it was just kind of it was an easy way to get access to those people because we kind of already had that mutual connection.
Hmm.
Um, and it was fine, like it was good. The book turned out okay. It wasn't like looking back now, like it wasn't amazing, but for like a 21 year old to do it was amazing. And that kind of started it. From there, I always wanted to do more. It was another couple of years before I did another book based on the podcast I used to do with a co-author.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, I started looking for other opportunities to make books for other people.
What was the title of that first book?
The first book was called MHS Entrepreneurs. MHS was just a school I went to, Melbourne High
Oh,
School.
uh-huh.
And it was, yeah, it was a school that was like a highly academic school. So
Hmm.
like that, a lot of people want to be doctors and lawyers and engineers and stuff. And then
Hmm.
there wasn't too much focus on like business and entrepreneurship, but there was like a few people who had been really successful, like the, top three or four richest person in Australia went to our school.
Oh,
Um, and so like there was a few success stories of like people who had done it like a different way, but they weren't really talked about. So that was kind of I was like, well, I don't really want to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer. What other pathways are there? So that was kind of the thinking behind that was how do I um, start learning about those people and then show, school students a alternative path.
hmm. I want to get into it because I remember that like we talked. What was it like 2 weeks ago? I think
Mm.
that we were catching up. You shared that you were like starting to get into physiotherapy, but then like
Mm.
changed into marketing. But that was so. Was that before you wrote this book, or
Yeah, that
when
was
did that
before.
happen?
I think that um, medicine was like the pinnacle for our school. Like everyone wanted to become doctors,
Hmm.
and I was like, I don't know if I really want to do that. But I was like, oh, and I probably wasn't quite smart enough either, and I was probably just one tier below. But I was like, oh, I really like sports though, so I kind of guess like the next best thing after medicine for someone who likes sports is physiotherapy. So I was like, oh, I guess everyone else wants to do this, and it's hard to get into, so it must be good. So that was kind of my
Hmm.
decision making process there. But after I kind of got into it, I realized it wasn't, yeah, it wasn't what I was expecting, or wasn't what I wanted to do anyway. And I think I was just doing it because I was kind of going with the crowd. And so after like, I did the first semester, I didn't do very well. I was like, oh, maybe it was, it's just an adjustment from high school to university. Maybe you'll get better.
Hmm.
Like a week and a half into the second semester, I was like, no, this is not for me. So I dropped out of physio and changed to doing commerce, economics, marketing, finance, that kind of stuff instead.
Hmm. But that was still like in university, not by yourself.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
How did you then start like well, you said that like through writing this yeah, you said that like through writing this book you were like starting to get into these other like possibilities. So we were mentioning like engineering, medicine, entrepreneurship. So was that your first um like experience with business in this sense with like not only with like having your own project, so the book to like launch it and share it with people, but like was that your first experience actually getting into this world of like, yeah, business?
Well, my first kind of dip into it was so like most kids, I got like a part-time job to make some money,
Hmm.
but not you don't make much money at all. Um, Working like at a toy shop, and then working at a where else did I work? Work at a bar, work at a frozen yogurt shop. But
Hmm.
when I was when I was like in year nine, maybe, or year 10, probably, I started doing maths tutoring. I was really good at maths, and
Hmm.
so like when I was in year 10, I'd tutor year sevens and eights. When I was in year 11, I'd tutor year nines and tens, and when I just finished year 12, I was tutoring year 11s and 12s. So like this
Hmm.
high school seniors. Um, and then like after like doing that for a couple of years, I was like, oh well, I've got like 10 students who are all, say they're paying me $30 an hour, but I can only do one or two a day because I got to drive to their house and it takes, 15 minutes to drive there, 15 minutes to drive back, and then go between all the people. So it's kind of like taking me like 4 or 5 hours, and I only do 3 hours of actual work, and the rest is like transport and driving around. And
Hmm.
because they're all in the same year, they're all doing the same work. So I'm doing the same thing 10 times. So I was like, well, maybe there's a way to like improve this. Instead of me doing the same thing 10 times one on one and then paying $30 an hour, what if they paid like $50 for 3 hours, and I get all
Hmm.
of them in the room at the same time and do the same thing? Then all of a sudden for me, it becomes, $500 over three
Hmm.
hours. And for them, they're getting, a cheaper rate as well because they're getting 3 hours worth. Um, and so I was like, well, I think just like mathematically, it makes sense
Hmm.
to try and do that. So I started doing those like group tutoring, and then it kind of built up from there. Like the first one I had, literally the first group I had was like I was doing these lectures. The first
Hmm.
lecture I had was two people. I don't know if two people counts as a lecture. If it's literally just two people. I think the next one was maybe seven, then it got to 11 and got to 15, and then I was normally doing maybe 30 or 40 people. The biggest one I did was like 300.
Oh,
Um, of like so then I started doing these lectures of like in the school holidays before the
mhm.
school year started. I'd kind of teach them ahead, so they'd be like 6 months ahead because I do like a week of intensive lectures with them. um, and so yeah, that was kind of like the first business that kind of grew out of like started as
Mhm.
one-on-one, then went to group stuff, then went to bigger lecture stuff, and then we started adding other subjects. So kind of all throughout whilst I was doing uni, I had this kind of going on the side as well, which was like a good taste of that world. Being having to do marketing, having to organize, the programs, having to book venues, having to um, deliver such a good experience that they tell their friends.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that was kind of my first real foray into the business world.
Was that all in person? Because like when you had 300 people, were all the 300 people like in the same room?
Yeah, all in the same room, all on the summer holidays as well. So I was like, man, why
Hmm.
would they want to do maths on the summer holidays? But
Yeah.
yeah,
Uh-huh. But I mean, it was good for you because like it was
yeah,
business during
exactly.
the summer, so. Mhm.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, and then I think three things happened, I'd say. One, I tried to grow it too fast. I feel like if I had just stuck to the math stuff, it was good. But then I got
Mhm.
a partner on board who, like, then I did English, which was good. But then we tried to do chemistry, biology, physics, economics. Like we tried to expand too quickly into all these different
Mhm.
subjects, and then we we're back to having like 5 or 6 people at a time.
Mhm.
Um, One thing was then I started kind of working as well, like going to from full-time student to full-time job, and it was kind of hard to balance the two. And then the other was I just kind of disagreed with the process fundamentally. I was like, these kids are like so stressed to get really good grades in high school maths, and then most of them are going to go on to do a university degree or a job that doesn't really need this math
Mhm.
stuff
Mhm.
anyway. And they're kind of just like studying just to pass the test. I was like, they're not really learning anything. I wanted people to learn stuff, but they were just like focused on just on the exams and not like that brought the bigger picture. Like, what are they actually going to get out of this? So I think
Mhm.
those three factors that kind of came to its natural conclusion.
Hmm. There are two things I wanna like dive into from here. So like the first, which is what I wanna get into right now, is like your experience when you had your first full-time job, but like with this, like the other thing is, so you're mentioning like how you started like to go broad in the topics that in the subjects that you were teaching, and like in your book. So, well, was this your second book, or I'm showing
Yeah,
it so
that
people
was.
can see? It's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
shit they
yeah.
never taught you. Uh-huh.
That's right. And that was like the first. It was a second book, but the first proper book. Like the other one was good, but it was just for a very niche
Mm-hmm.
audience, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Whereas this was like one that we'd kind of built the audience, spent a lot of time on it, and really
Mm-hmm.
focused on like launching it properly,
Yeah.
with the goal of selling as many as possible.
Yeah, because like the reason why I was mentioning it is because like you dive into many topics in the book, so like
Mm.
business, psychology, personal development, the future of economy. So I was like reading some pages before we started talking as well, and that was I was starting to like read these parts where you talk about like AI and how you saw these things developing in the future, and like right now we can start to see those things like in a much more popular way than like just a few years back. But yeah, we will get into that. Like, how was your first experience in a full-time job, like compared to the things that you had been doing?
Yeah, so I started working in a bank in like corporate banking, like bigger businesses banking,
Hmm.
and I was a pretty bad employee. Like I was. I think the problem was like I thought I was super smart,
Mm.
and I could kind of work out the bare minimum. Like I was
Hmm.
smart enough to work out what's the least I can do to not get fired, but I didn't like commit to like them going over and above to actually do any real work. Um, and I think it was because I always had this like I was like, man, I'm doing this thing on the side, getting 300 kids to a lecture theatre on a Saturday in the middle of summer to do maths,
Hmm.
and then I go here and I'm like editing PowerPoint slides and stuff. I'm like, well, what's the?
Uh-huh.
It didn't make. Yeah, I was like, man, this just doesn't make sense. Why am I doing this type of thing? So I didn't last
Hmm.
that long. I was only there for maybe I was there for maybe 8 months, um,
Hmm.
which is probably like 7 months longer than they should have fired me earlier.
Uh-huh.
They must have seen some potential, but yeah, I was just a bad employee. I think if I did it now, I'd be able to do much better. But at that time, I was just like
Hmm.
too like um, I just like wasn't my head wasn't in it.
What did you do after like this first job? Once you
Um,
where did you get fired, or did you just like quit?
no, I left. I don't think they
Mm.
would have fired me, but they should have. But yeah, I quit.
Mm.
And then I ended up. It was just before that I started. This was in 2016. We started the What You Will Learn podcast. So
Mhm.
it started off as so the other Adam, my other friend Adam, both of us are called Adam. We both finished
Mhm.
uni at the same time. We both started work at the same time. Both working these jobs in the city. He was a lot better than I was in terms of he actually enjoyed it and was like doing proper work, where I was just kind of taking the piss a little bit. But we were like, oh man, we're both going to the city. Let's use this as an excuse. We had some mutual friends or friends of friends, and someone he knew that was working with me, and someone I knew was working with him. And I was like, oh, let's like use this as an excuse to like invite girls to come for like breakfast or coffee on a Friday morning in the city before work. And so we
Mhm.
started off, and there was maybe like six of us. It was me, Adam, and three or four girls.
Mhm.
And we were just kind of, talking about work, talking about what we were doing, as like a bit of a networking, professional development kind of. But really, for us, it was just like we just wanted to talk to the girls. Um,
Uh-huh.
but and then so it was okay for like a month, and then like the girls stopped coming, and it was just me and Adam. We were the only ones left. So from there, we were like, oh, I guess we'll keep going. We'll just keep chatting about work, and then we started talking about books, what we're reading, what podcasts we're listening to, and then we were like, oh, well, we're kind of both talking about books, but I don't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know what I'm talking about. Let's read the same book, and then next week we'll
Mhm.
come back and discuss that book that we both read at the same time.
Mhm.
Um, so then we started doing that for a while on these Friday morning breakfast dates. And then we're like, well, we're doing this anyway. Why don't we just like record it? Like we're both reading the same books. We're both talking about the books. Let's like record this and turn it into a podcast.
Uh-huh.
So that's when we're like, okay, great. So we'll read a book each week. We'll talk about the best bits, and that's our podcast episode.
Do you remember what the first episode was? So which
Yeah, the
book?
book is we're like, man, reading a book in a week is ridiculous. So we had to find a really, really small book. So we did Anything You Want by Derek Sivers. Do you know that book?
No, I don't.
So this guy, Derek Sivers, he's been on Tim Ferriss's podcast a whole bunch. Uh, had a really random story. He was like a circus clown or something, and then he was a musician, and then he started. He was really curious about like the internet and coding websites and stuff. So he built this website with a button on it to sell his own CDs when he was a musician. And then his other musicians friends were like, "Oh man, how do we do that?" Like, because they were just like not able to sell their stuff. They were just like literally sitting on the side of the road trying to sell stuff with cash. And so he was like, here's how you do it. He helped him out. Here, you put this button, you do this code, you get their credit card details, and then you can send them the CD. And then so it just started as that, and then it kind of grew to like this massive business. I think he sold it for like, I forget what it was, like tens of millions of dollars that he sold this for.
Okay.
And donated all that money to charity then. And then so he wrote this book about business and like non-typical lessons that like he obviously did it a really strange way, and like so it was maybe like 80 pages like of his business lessons and a little bit of life lessons as well. So we started with that. That was our first episode.
Do you remember like some of these lessons that he shared? So you say that they were like unusual lessons. So what's like one comparison that you have like between a usual lesson and like a lesson of his book?
Yeah, I remember one of them was when he was working and he didn't like his job, and he wanted to quit, and he thought it was like so weird that you just like hand in your letter of resignation and then leave, and then like your boss was kind of screwed until they found someone else. So he was like, well, he wanted to do it a bit better or a bit differently, or he didn't really know what the usual thing was. So he found his replacement and trained his replacement, and he was like, okay, so I'm done working here, but hey, I found this person. They're going to come take my spot. I've taught them how to do everything. They already know everything. They're ready to start next week. So there you go. And the guy's like, oh, that's so weird. Like normally, like someone just quits, and then they just like have to spend like 6 weeks looking for someone, and then another 2 months training someone, and then he's like, oh, okay, well, I guess we've got someone ready to go already to replace you. So that was just like one from his like early career. And then I think another big one that's really stuck with me. I don't know. I don't think it was from that book. He did another book. He's done a bunch of other books, but around marketing, that a lot of people like to like tease a big announcement, and then they like to announce things, and then like it's kind of like what we did with our book. Actually, was like we like teased it was coming, and then we announced it, and then we're like, oh, but you can't buy it yet. Just wait until it's ready, and then like eventually when you announce it, people are like, oh, didn't I hear about this like 4 or 5 months ago when you announced it? Like, is this a new thing? I don't really get it. Whereas Derek Sivers' advice is like, announce it when it's ready to like actually take action. So it's not like, hey, this book's coming soon, buy it in 3 months, or like, oh, I'm about to start this podcast, you can listen to it soon, or I'm going to launch this website in a couple of weeks, come check back when it's ready. He's like, no, just like announce it when it's ready. Like announce like, okay, this is ready, the book is launched, buy it right now. So that like you capitalize on the most amount of attention, rather than like you kind of lose a lot of attention because everyone's excited for the announcement, but then they have to wait, and then you're not going to get everybody come back to do what you want them to do later. So he's like, when you've got them at the most exciting moment, make sure it's at a point where they can actually take action straight away.
Do you think that like this idea helped you to launch and like expand your book a lot?
I think that we probably did the first one all wrong. In that.
Oh wait, so you did like the strategy that he shared with the other book with.
Strategy. We did the wrong strategy for the for the shit they never taught you. We talked about it, we teased it was coming, and then we had to edit it more, and then there was some delays in production, and then like so it kept like dragging on and dragging on and dragging on. Whereas in the second book we did for the podcast, the shit they never taught you about attitude.
Yeah, I remember that one.
The proper way, where it was like, okay. The day we announced it was like, okay, you can buy it right now. And so I think we had a better uptake in that first week, because like people could take action straight away.
No, yeah, it makes sense. And yeah, I want to like start getting into the book. So I told you when we were like planning to record the podcast that I wanted to get into like how you have used or experienced some of the ideas or lessons in the book, like in your life after both like your show and the actual book. So like I want to first like start getting into, I think the first topic you discuss in the book is like the idea of how habits compound. So like if you just like keep eating like trash food daily, then you'll become obese. But then like if you exercise, that'll compound. So like these ideas I have seen in my life as well. Like there have been seasons when I haven't been reading that much, and so I have seen my mental like state a more like less stable in some ways, let's say, or like I don't really approach life from a place where I'm like being consistent in and in a place where I'm approaching like events in a way where I'm proud of who I am becoming, if that makes sense. But like yeah, with this what I mean is that I can see like through experience as well that like these things compound. And so how has that been for you, like after the show and after the book? Because like in the experience of writing it and of talking about the ideas, it might be easy to have them like near your daily life, but then like afterwards, how was that for you?
Yeah, definitely. It's a I've seen both sides of it as well. Times where I've gone through a period of say writing a new book, and if you write a little bit every day, it kind of gets easier and easier and easier. And then if you take like 3 or 4 days off, and then it's so hard to then get back into it. It feels like such a big. If you're just doing a little bit every day, it feels fine. Like it doesn't. There's not that much pressure, and like you're ticking away and you're making some progress. But then if you have a couple of days off, and then you've got a blank page staring back at you, and then just to get back into it, just to start it again, feels like so ominous. It's much easier to like once you get that momentum going to keep it going rather than try to start that momentum again. And then same as like say physical stuff as well. So I just did a triathlon last month. And so like for 3 or 4 months of training before that, like the first week, it's hard to get started. Like to go for a short run or a short swim or a short ride, it feels like a lot of effort. Like you have to move your schedule around, you have to, get all your gear organized, and then like you're tired because you're not that fit at the start. And then, doing 2 or 3 sessions a week is like a big change. But then as you get a bit of momentum going, and then, after like 6 weeks, all of a sudden you're doing 6 sessions a week, and you're riding for 3 times as long, or you're going for runs twice as long, and like your schedule's already kind of fit in around it. Or you wake up earlier or whatever it is that you're like, okay, I know I have to do this. I'm just going to work out how to do it. So to start it, it's hard, but to keep it going is much easier.
Then like with the ideas that you talked about in the book, so like specifically the personal development ones, how was it for you? So do you have one like specific one that has become like a mantra for your life, or like on the other side, one that you used to like use a lot in your daily life, like some concept or idea or framework that you then like stopped using and that you saw some negative effects happening in your life?
I think one is time management stuff. I've got a lot more into recently. So I used to be really into it, and then I stopped, and then got really back into it. So I've got a daughter now. She's just over 2 years old, and so when that first started, like when she was first born, like the schedule was total chaos. Like we weren't sleeping, and then sometimes if I was off work, and then she'd be up for an hour, and then she'd nap for an hour, and then she'd be up for an hour, and then she'd nap for an hour, and then so like there was no schedule whatsoever. There was no time management. It was just she was dictating the schedule. When she was awake, we had to be on. When she was hungry, we had to feed her. When she was tired, she had to be put down to sleep. And so it's just like the schedule was purely on her. So like for a good like 6 to 12 months, there was no time management at all. But then so I had to get back into it again, and it was really a matter of like I think that a crucial one is working out like what has to be done and what doesn't have to be done. I think the easiest stuff to do is usually the least important. Like if you've got a to-do list of the day of 15 things, you're going to want to do the easiest one first, but it's probably the least important as well. And so the hardest thing to do is to do the most important thing, which is it's going to be uncomfortable. Whether it's make that tough phone call, to have that tough conversation, or like sit down and like focus to do an hour of solid work, to do whatever you're working on that feels challenging, but is the most important thing to do. It's much easier to do the smaller tasks. So I
Hmm.
suppose the like key lessons or key actions to do is getting good at doing the hard thing that you don't really want to do, is one. And then number two is like being willing to like let the other stuff go a bit. Like if it's not urgent, sometimes it can gnaw away at you and you feel like you should be doing it, but sometimes it's a good skill to like let things go and like push them down the list and like
Sure. Uh-huh.
yeah, like I suppose an example at work, say you've got 10 tasks. Sometimes you can let a couple go. Like it feels bad. Like you want to do every single task and like reply to every single person and make sure everybody else is happy. But sometimes like tasks, um, a tangible thing that I've been doing recently is like instead of just having everything in the inbox, which I used to use like my to-do list, like if it's in the inbox, I still have to do something. Whereas now I move it into like different folders. So it's like actions to do this week, things to do this
Hmm.
month, and like maybe later type of things if they're not that important, but I still have to do something about them. And then a lot of the times, if I put something to do in this week, um, and if it doesn't get done this week, if I check back a week later, I'm like, oh, it's already like someone else has already done it, or like it didn't actually matter in the end, it didn't need to be done anyway, or like that opportunity's kind of moved on and it's no longer relevant. So sometimes if you let things go, you don't have to do them at all. And then sometimes, like if they really need to be done, people might follow you up. So it's like, hey, where's this? I was expecting
Hmm.
you haven't done it yet. It's like, oh, okay, I guess that's pretty important. I better do it. Um, and so it's yeah. Sometimes you got to be careful. Like it can catch you out if you just like keep putting things off, and then people are chasing you.
Hmm.
But working out that balance between okay, it's like it's not that important. Like this is like a 3 out of 10. It's probably easy to do. I could probably spend 20 minutes and do it, but it's more important to do like the 8 out of 10 that I really need to focus, and it's uncomfortable. It's hard, but it's important.
How have you managed like tasks that are like that have this friction, this initial friction, like to get them done, but that also like don't depend on anyone else to be done. So like I say this because for me through the last weeks with my newsletter that has been an issue in some way because like
Mm.
I have been consistent with the actual issues of the newsletter, so like sending them each week. So yeah, I send it every 5 days. But like besides that, I have been like postponing having some sessions of like reflection on where I want to take this to and like what brand I want to create, like what focus I want to give it. And so that's been kind of a problem for me in some ways because like it's always easier since it's something that is not very defined. It's just like a
Yeah,
task. Like it's a very big thing. Like define what you want to do with this newsletter. It's like
yeah,
it's much more complicated and undefined than like just edit this podcast for this client that you have or whatever. Because like
sure.
in the other one, you know how much it will take. You know how to do it like step by step, and like it's much more defined. So how have you been able to like manage this sort of like tasks and situations where you don't have like anything really defined?
Totally. And they're the hardest ones to do, right? And then probably the
Hmm.
most important, like the most
Yeah.
important, like highest leverage, longest term
Mm.
decisions that you need to make are the trickiest ones that you want to avoid, right?
Hmm.
Um, I suppose like a few pieces of advice. One is to like break it down to be smaller. Like it feels so epic to be like, okay, where do I want this to be in 10 years? And it's like such a big decision, right? And it's like instantly that like pressure and that weight of that decision is going to turn you off wanting to do it, right? So how do you like
Yeah.
break it down to be smaller? How do you yeah, instead of doing 10 years, how do you do it in, 1 year or 6 months, or like how do you reduce the pressure of that? I suppose one is then to like how do you systematize it a little bit? Like instead of being like a blank page, what's my vision for 10 years, which is about a huge place to start. How can you like break it down into different sections? Like what do I want the content to be? How much time do I want to spend? Like almost have like a checklist of like questions then. So instead of just one big question, you've got 10 smaller questions that you can kind of tick through one by one. And maybe that can then help you do it more frequently, more constant reviews rather than just like this one big scary one.
Hmm. Do you use AI for this sometimes? Like not specifically for this type of tasks where you have like everything undefined, but maybe for other ones, like to plan them better.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Even just to ask like of that, if it's like if you don't even know where to start, like ask it where to start. Like in if you're like, okay, how do I define my vision for the next 10 years or whatever? Then maybe you break it down and say what are the 10 areas of my life I should start planning.
Hmm.
Or like, if I'm making a 10-year vision, what should be the six key factors that I should be deciding? So then instead of one big decision, you've got six smaller ones.
Hmm.
Because that's like it's probably starting is the hardest part, right? So if you get started, if that can help you get started, then that's going to be amazing.
Hmm. Now, how was this process for you and the other Adam, so Jonesy? How was it to start like planning, writing the book, and then like actually, so like yeah, the planning stage, then the actual writing stage, then the publishing stage. So like specifically the first part of the brainstorming, and starting to move the needle. How was that for you?
I think it was exciting. There was a lot of energy around it. There was a lot of excitement, a lot of enthusiasm, which was good. If we at the very first stage were hesitant and indecisive and like dreading it, that
Hmm.
probably would have been a good sign that it was a bad idea. But there was a lot of excitement, a lot of passion and energy. We both had like different ideas about how we wanted to do it. It changed a lot. So like we had this initial idea. We wrote a whole bunch of stuff. The initial idea was just like our top 100 books. So I think what did we do? Top 50? Yeah, that's what we did. So as our free giveaway for the podcast, we did our top 50
Hmm.
best books of all time or whatever. So we after reading 150 books, we were like, okay, let's rank our top 50, put them in order, and do like a 3 sentence description on each one.
Hmm.
And that was just like an easy giveaway for people to sign up to our email list, basically.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it was fine. Like it was our list of top 50, but and there's a little bit of info on each one, but not a lot. But it was pretty popular in terms of like we had a lot of people who were interested in it. A lot of people signed up. So the next year we updated it. We took some books out. We added a bit more detail, and then we're like, well, this seems to be working. So how about we do this as our book idea? We'll do our top 100, so it's more. And instead of doing like 3 sentences on each one, we'll do like 3 pages on each one. And then all of a sudden, we've got a 300-page book
Hmm.
summarizing our favorite 100 books. So that's what we did first. We basically wrote that book. We split it up. We did 50 each. Like I did the even numbers, he did the odd numbers, or whatever we did.
Hmm.
And we got to the end, and we're like, oh, this is pretty good. And we're like, oh, this is probably like 95% done. We got some feedback. We sent it out to maybe 5 or 6 people, a couple of friends, a couple of people who listen to the podcast, a couple of other similar sort of podcast author type people to give us feedback. And like a lot of feedback was like, oh, this is good stuff, but like it's a bit dry, it's a bit boring, and it's a bit random. We were kind of just summarizing the book, but they said that their favorite part of the podcast was like us injecting our stories into it, which we didn't do in the book.
Hmm.
And they were also like, oh, it's kind of like, book, book 79 is this book on personal development, and then book 78 is this economics book, and then book 77 is this philosophy book, and then like book 76 is like about technology, and then like it goes back to
Hmm.
time management, and then so they were kind of like, it's kind of weird, and like I'm not really interested in everything. Um, but I like some bits a lot. So that we kind of took that feedback and we're like, okay, how do we kind of completely redo this? So from Adam Jones saying we're 95% done, it took like another 2 years after that to redo it.
Uh-huh.
We basically started again. Um, because so basically we were like, okay, so that feedback of like the random books, how about we like categorize them? So there's a section on personal development, and there's a section on time management, a section on businesses, and a section on marketing, and a section on philosophy. and psychology, because we found that like some people loved some sections and not others, but everybody loved something. So we're like, great, you don't have to read the whole book, but some people were like, great, I love everything and I want a taste of everything. Or if you're like, great, I'm really focused on human psychology, then you can go deep on that one area. So we did that. So we regrouped everything and categorized them. And then we just like made it more fun, I guess, more interesting. Instead of just like dry book summaries, we made them more engaging, more funny stories, more stories about us, more ways we applied it to our lives, more like historical examples or famous figures, to, I guess, bring it to life a bit.
Yeah, I was talking with this guy that I'm gonna also record a podcast with on Friday, and we were talking about how like on podcasting shows or on podcast shows, yeah, it has become more popular to focus on like personal stories and on like your own experience and how people are interested in that, and not only on the content compared to like, well, he's a lot into podcasting and into like he's got a podcasting marketing agency, so he knows some things about that. But he says that like a few years back it was like people focused on like very specific and niche podcast shows where you learned like about a very specific thing. But like right now it's more that you like follow the hosts, not really the content, but you also like the content that the hosts share. And so I guess that it was kind of what happened to you in the sense, but like instead of with podcasts, with the book.
Yeah, definitely. We kind of figured like we were most interested in the book. We weren't that interested in ourselves. Whereas the people who were listening, like, yeah, they were interested in the book content, but I think you're right. They were more interested in like the, they weren't listening. I think it was like, they weren't like listening for us and our journey, but they also were like, they were interested about how can you actually take these things from books and apply them to your own life. And so like, we were just kind of like a living example of that. And it just helps people to then do the same for their lives, I think, as well. Because not everybody's reading a book a week like we were, and then not everybody's trying to apply it like we were. But if you can then see one example of how somebody's taken something, like one of those books that year might stick with you, and then you can actually apply it.
Now getting back into the experience of podcasting and of having your show, how was reading a book each week when you were reading like this very thick books, like when you were reading, I don't know, a 600-page biography or whatever?
Yeah.
How was it?
It would have been impossible to start. So at the start, like I told you, we did that like 70 or 80 page, really small, easy book. And then I think the second week we did the 1 Minute Manager, which again is a really small book. And then I think we missed a week, and then we did in the first probably like 15 episodes, we did like a couple of documentaries as well, because we're like, man, we just can't read a book every week. So we did like a book 1 week, and then a documentary, and then a movie, and then we went to and did a book again. So it took a while to like get up to be able to read a book a week, but by the end it was easy. Like we're probably reading like, instead of 52 books a year, we're probably reading like 80 books a year, and not every single book was making it onto the podcast. So we'd read a bunch of books, and if they weren't any good, then they wouldn't make it on. And in the end, like we'd just work it out. We'd be like, okay, well, if we're going to read, the Leonardo da Vinci biography that's like 800 pages, well, then we're going to have to like build the bank up. So we've got to read like a whole bunch of like 150-page books and like queue them up, and then that gives us like 3 weeks to read this long book. So we had to read like a book in 4 days, a book in 4 days, a book in 4 days, and then we'd have like those extra days to read the big ones.
And now talking about personal, about time management, how did you manage like integrating that reading into like the work you were doing? So by that time, were you still like on any full-time job or anything like that, or how was that?
So then afterwards, I was after the bank, and I left, and then was doing the podcast, and then eventually I went back to a digital marketing agency. But in sort of like 2018, 2019, with 4 years into the podcast, and working full time, it was kind of easy because I was getting the train into the city every day to work. And so like literally every day was like half hour in the morning, half hour at night, going in and coming out to read books. And then like I'd sometimes like I'd go early and I'd go to a cafe and read a book for 20 minutes. Then I'd take a book to lunch and I'd read a book at lunchtime for 40 minutes. So it's kind of like between like the morning, lunchtime, afternoon. It was kind of easy to like read for an hour and a half every day.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like a big change again during COVID when like 2020, everyone was working from home, so the train trips was gone. So then I had to re kind of recalibrate or like re do some more time management again to like work out, okay, I still need to read a book every week, but I don't have this train trip that I used to always read. And where do I find the time now
Mm-hmm.
to read, an hour a day? Because it used to be like that passive time where I was on the train. Now I had to like actively choose to carve out time specifically
Mm-hmm.
for reading.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like again a bit of an adjustment. Took some time to work out. Okay, how do I actually slot this into my day?
Mm. No, yeah, for me, like during the pandemic, I mean, it was a little different because I started like reading consistently just a few months before lockdown. And so when once lockdown hit, I was just like expanding the time that I was reading. So I had already like created this habit. But what then happened to me was that like when the pandemic was over and once we were like starting to move around more often, I started like to lose this habit in some way. And so like right now for like 2 years, I probably haven't read as much and as consistently as I used to. I think that it also has to do like with how stages in life change and like
Mm.
activities and like your daily routine. But yeah, like definitely. I mean, I get what you were saying because I had like a similar experience, but I guess for me it was like the other way around, like from the pandemic into like normal life.
Yeah, 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 for
Yeah.
sure.
Uh, and then like another question I had about like the experience of writing the book. How do you feel that like having a partner to do it with, how did that impact like the both the excitement, the consistently and the accountability of the project compared to other projects you have had, like maybe another ghostwriting project where you were like just working alone?
Mm. Definitely different. Pros and cons of each, that's for sure. So with the when we were rewriting that big yellow book, it was kind of an easy-ish kind of a system because it was so kind of clearly structured. Like we had, that top 100 books, and it was kind of like we just like write one each day for 50 days, and then it'd be done. So that was kind of
Mm-hmm.
easy because we'd already done all the planning work to work out what needed to be done. That we kind of had a clear structure. And again, it's kind of like what you were saying. Like if you've got a big task that's very vague and not clear what to do, it's hard to start. But when we're like, okay, this book we're writing, Who Moved My Cheese? We got to write 800 words about this book to
Mm-hmm.
summarize it. It was kind of clear and easy to do like 45 minutes or an hour and a half and smash it out and be done.
Mm-hmm.
So that was good. And like knowing that like we both had to do the exact same amount of work, and by the end of 50 days, it was going to be very clear if one person hadn't done their parts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that was good from the accountability sense. Um, I think the downside of that was um, the other Adam works a lot harder than I do. He like
Ah.
he commits like when he's focused, he works really hard. So like if I was doing like one every day and that was the plan, then he'd be doing like two or three every day, and all of a sudden I'd be behind, even though I was kind of on time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and also just like our styles are very different as well. So we had to work out how do we find that middle ground. And so in the end, we ended up having a bit of a system where like I would write it, then he would kind of add comments, or here's how I can add some stories, or here's how we can add that, and then I'd rewrite it. So each chapter kind of got written three times
Mm-hmm.
as the first draft. So like me to him, then back to me, or if he did it, it was him, then me, then back to him. So it was kind of good in that sense that we were kind of able to. It was like forced accountability in terms of the timelines and the deadlines, and then also we're able to then tap into each other's strengths. So I'd say like my strengths was definitely like the clarity and the consistency. So I could kind of think from the mind of somebody who'd never read this book. If we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, if you've read the book and you know what's going on, then that's great. It's easy. You can kind of write whatever you want. But I'm thinking like, if someone has never read this book, how do we explain these concepts to them for the very first time? So I think that was my strength, was he had a lot of assumed knowledge, So he was kind of assuming that people already had this knowledge. So he didn't go back to the basics. And then his strengths was definitely injecting those stories and examples and making it light. Mine was a bit more dry and a bit more
Hmm.
literal. He was able to add more of the fun side to it. So I think there was a good mix. So whenever his went too crazy, I was able to kind of bring it back, and whenever mine was too boring, he was able to add a bit of life to it. So it was a good mix there. Um, and then you asked about how does that compare to like doing an individual project? Yeah, so I did this one
Hmm.
other project that was like a biography or like a history of a company over like 6 decades. Um, sorry, 6 generations. So it was from the
Hmm.
like the 1700s through to 2023
Oh, is
or
it an,
whatever.
an Australian company or?
Yeah, it was an Australian company. So it was about a guy who basically bought a herd of cattle and cows, and then was selling the cows, and then was like a farmer basically, and then they did that for 2 or 3 generations, and then eventually, like one of the great great grandsons started being like the meat, uh, like the not factory, but like the processing place where they buy a whole bunch of cows and then send them off to the butchers type of thing. And then they built that company up. So it was like taking a step up in the production chain. Um, and it was like 6 generations where every time they had a son, the son took over the business, and so it was kind of
Hmm.
telling that company history. And it was a cool project for me to do. Involved a lot of interviews and a lot of research and a lot of going back through history and hearing different stories and different angles. Um, but yeah, it probably got to the point where I was doing too much of that research and I just had to knuckle down and do the work. Um, and so when it was good to just like, I got to a point where I was like, okay, this is like dragging on too long. I just need to smash out the first draft. I think because I was like thinking too big again. It wasn't clear like what's the structure, how is this going to work, and then when I got to that point of like, okay, I just need to write anything and everything that comes to mind, get it all down. Then it was a lot easier once you had that momentum to then tidy it up later. Um, so yeah, I think the key there was just like sometimes you just got to knuckle down and do it badly, because it's easier to fix like a bad version than
Hmm.
like no version at all. Like if you've got a shit thing, it's easier to clean it up, but if you've got nothing, then there's a long way to go.
Do you feel do you feel that that also has like been something you've seen with other type of projects? I mean, I know that like most of the things that you have done have, yeah, they're related like to writing and to books in some way, but like any other project that you might have worked with that you saw this pattern of like having like just something in existence and then
Yeah,
from that like
definitely.
improving it.
I think everything. If you think about it, like doing a annual report for work or making a presentation, it's such a like doing making a pitch deck or whatever. Like it's such a big task from a blank page. Like it's so much to do, so hard to do. If you can just smash out a really shitty first draft, it becomes a lot easier. Like if you just think even the structure, like what are the sections? So like if you're doing an annual report, okay, like what was our results last year? What was the plan? What were we going to do? What did the results this year end up being? What did we learn? Even if you like have those sections and put dot points for each one, and it's messy and it doesn't make any sense, at least it's better, and you're at least on the way. Then you can be like, oh, actually, maybe I should change the order of these slides, and then okay, this one I should use this image and this graph, and then this one actually that doesn't make sense. I'm going to delete that. But that's much easier than like going from blank. Or same as like
Hmm.
a pitch deck. You're like, okay, I'm going to start. This is the sequence. I'm going to start here, move to this next, move to this next. At least if you get started, you're well on your way compared to just looking down at it, opening up a completely blank PowerPoint slide deck, and man, where do I even begin?
About this, like about just opening a blank page. So I'm not sure what the actual like concept for this was, but like this idea of like having a, yeah, blank page and like having so many possibilities of things that you can like write or whatever, and then like having that be like an obstacle for like getting started. I'm not sure if this has a name. It surely does, but like I don't remember what it is. So like
I'm sure it does as
with
well. Yeah.
this, yeah, I have seen this idea a lot on like TikTok and Instagram, and like that's like not an analogy, but like a concept to then explain like how many times we have like the idea or the perception that there's a lot of possibility, but like it is like so big or even so like abstract that you don't even like have a clear way of how to like narrow it down in something that you can use to get started. How has this been for you as you have developed your writing skills? So like right now that you have done like many writing projects, many books, like is it easier for you to like just get started out of a blank page with many possibilities?
I think you definitely get a little bit better at it. And you get better each time, but it's still hard. It's still definitely like that first getting started is so hard. Do you know the book Eat That Frog?
Yeah, I do. Uh-huh.
It's like it's a pretty cheesy book, but as the key example, I guess it's like if you can, if the first thing you do every day is eat a frog, then the rest of the day is going to be a lot easier. So I think it's a weird and pretty weak, but it is pretty good. Like if you do that frog first, like do the hardest thing first, do the most uncomfortable thing first, get it out of the way, then it's going to be a lot easier from then on. Like the rest of the day is going to be much easier. The rest of the project's going to be much easier. If you can just get away from that blank nothingness and get something down, get some kind of structure or some kind of order or some kind of rough draft or some kind of, even if the notes don't make sense and everything changes later, it's still going to be better than nothing.
Mm-hmm. How has this idea been for you with like your your personal life in the sense that like for example one thing that I've been like not necessarily studying but like uh reflecting on recently is that like when you start to get very comfortable like in some way like yeah like in our modern world where you like can just be like very chill in your house on Netflix and like have everything available to you, you also start to become a tyrant in some way and like stop being like stop appreciating some things in your life, and then like your relationships might like start getting little affected by this in some way. So like, do you have any experience with this of like eating the frog first thing in the morning to then like make the rest of the day easier for you personally and like with productivity and with people around you? So yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, a little bit. I think one trivial example is thinking about like food and diet and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That sometimes, if I'm working from home one day, it's easy to get to like 11:45. I haven't had breakfast. I'm hungry. I haven't prepared anything. All of a sudden, you rummage around in the cupboard. You never know what's going to come out. You normally at that point you're not going to eat the best food, but if you can like prepare in the morning or the night before or something, then you can be like, okay, I'm going to have this egg frittata for lunch, or I'm going to make this overnight oats that I can have for breakfast. So that instead of waking up and being like, oh, I don't have time, or it's too hard, I'm not going to make breakfast, I'm just going to skip breakfast. Then you've got something there ready to go. So I think even just like thinking through like, how can you prepare? How can you do things ahead of time and earlier so that when you get to the moment itself, it's not a big challenge. It's like, I've already prepared for this. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
can apply kind of everywhere. Like that's a trivial example of like preparing your lunch the night before or something. But thinking about all sorts of different things, if you can kind of get ahead of it and be ready so that when the time comes to make the big decisions, you're actually in a space that you've kind of already done all the hard work, that's a much better position than like getting there and being like, okay, now what do I do? And you're probably going to make the worst decision or to take the easy road.
Mm-hmm. How do you see this in like relationships? So like for example, let's say this like an imaginary case. So like you were like working with Adam and then you were like starting to overthink some things of like what Adam was doing or of what you were doing and what the other Adam would be thinking about that. So like let's say that you were starting to fall into this like overthinking habit. How would you use this idea of like preparing before to like handle this complicated moments?
Mm. I like how you said it's an imaginary case, but that was a very true case that happened all the
Ah.
time.
Uh-huh,
All
uh-huh,
the time.
uh-huh.
And it
Yeah.
was mostly for me. I was always like overthinking it or thinking that he was thinking this, and then in the end he was like, "Oh, I hadn't even thought about that at all." It was always in that direction. But I think, like, say if we're actually pretty good in terms of like he was pretty good at like notice. I was more stubborn or sassy or immature. He was always more mature, and like he'd always notice if anything wasn't quite right, that we just had to get it out. Like it was better than the I think it was in Jordan Peterson's first book, 12 Rules for Life. He spoke about this idea of the
Hmm.
dragon. I think it was from a kid's book, in all honesty, about this dragon. And the kid's like, "Oh, mum, there's a dragon in the room." And the mum's like, "No, no, there's no dragon there." The kid's like, "No, there's definitely a dragon here. We should look at this dragon." The mum's like, "No, no, no, there's no dragon. Don't be silly. It's not there. Dragons aren't real. Dragons don't exist." And every time the mum ignored the dragon, like the dragon got bigger and bigger and bigger. And the kid's like, "The dragon's like the size of my bed now. We should probably do something about this." And the mum's like, "No, no, no, don't. There's no dragon here. Dragons don't exist. Don't be silly." Eventually, it takes over the house, and the mum's like, "Oh, okay, you're right. There is a dragon here. We should probably do something about that." And that's when the dragon kind of shrinks back to like a nice little cute pet. Um, and so it's kind of like that. That if you like ignore problems, pretend they don't exist, work around them, it just kind of builds and builds and builds and grows and grows and grows. Whereas if you can like get onto it early and address it early, it's actually not that big of a problem. So that was kind of the key, was slaying those dragons, was like getting onto it early. If there was ever like any little bit of friction early, like fixing it when it's a small thing is a lot easier than like if it grows and grows and grows and grows, it's going to be much harder to fix later. So the
Hmm.
key for that was like noticing it early, getting onto it early, and like getting it out of the way early.
What about like times when you were having some sort of friction with work, or like, yeah, with work, while working with Adam, or like with Adam, or how did you manage like friction that you did like acknowledge when it was like still small, but that kept like coming and repeating? Maybe it was because of some overthinking of any of you, or maybe it was because it was an actual problem that you had to solve. So like, yeah.
One of the, I think one of my main things in all areas, whether it's me and my wife who does the dishes at night, or whether it's me and Adam choosing who's going to do the work for this episode, or whether it's at work, me and the a boss being like, okay, whose responsibility is this? For me, the worst thing is the gray area. I need black or white. I'm like, it's either my job and I'm all in, or it's your job and I'm going to stay out of it.
Hmm.
So the gray area was definitely the worst. And for us, that was where all the friction came, was with the grey area, where I thought he was doing it, he thought I was doing it, and no one did it. And then that was where all the friction came. So some of the things we did was to just like be like, okay, let's get some black and white here. So at first in the podcast, we'd kind of choose together, okay, what's the next book going to be? And then we'd have fights about, oh, we should do this. No, I think we should do this. Oh, this one's better. This one's worse. And so there was like tension around that. So then what we did, we're like, okay, let's just like make this black and white. For the next 10 weeks, I'm going to pick 5 books, you're going to pick 5 books. You do your ones, I'll do my ones. And then it was just like a lot clearer and a lot simpler. And we had
Hmm.
a few rules around it. Then it was like, okay, I went through a phase of like really being obsessed with business, and he was really obsessed with politics, or like he was really into science, or he was really into philosophy, or like we'll go through waves. And then all of a sudden it's like, I'm just doing 5 business books and he's just doing 5 politics books. So like, okay, now we need some rules. So it has to be, minimum one female author, minimum one from this category, minimum one book has to be this many on Goodreads. So like we had a few rules in place, so that then we still had freedom to choose our own books, but within this framework of like making sure that the audience was happy that we're kind of covering all different sections.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I like the idea of like creating a framework and working inside that, like those limits and boundaries. And I think that like when, yeah, getting back into like time management, that's something that I have been, not only now recently, but like also before, something that I have been struggling with in some sense. Because like right now, for example, that I have like the freedom to choose what I'm gonna do each day, and like how I'm gonna structure tasks and whatever, is like sometimes, let's say, so much freedom that I end up like
Yeah.
doing nothing, and or maybe I just end up doing one thing and then like reflect and say like, oh, I could actually have done this other 5 things if I had more structure or whatever. But that's like something related to like personal management, to actually be disciplined, to have some boundaries, which is healthy. Did you read the Matthew McConaughey's memoir, Green Lights?
No, I haven't read it yet.
Oh, you haven't? It's my favorite book. I thought you had.
Really?
Yeah, it is.
I
It
think
is.
maybe last time we spoke was when it just came out, and I think you said that then as well.
Yeah, it
And
probably
I still
did.
read it.
No, yeah, I like it a lot. And so like the first chapter, so it's his memoir and he shares like his biography basically,
Yeah.
but like each chapter has like a different focus in some way, because like the chapter where he talks about like how he met his wife and like how they started like dating and what happened afterwards. I think it's called like um the arrow meets the target or something like that. And then he talks about this idea of like how he was like before meeting his wife, he was looking to find girls to date, but then like he stopped doing that, and then the girl came to him, and so that's the idea of that part of the book. But like the first part of the book is like I think the title is Find Your Frequency, and so like the summary or like the conclusion from that chapter is like creating some boundaries to freedom allows you like to actually know how to operate. So like this idea of like if you don't know where you are going, then no wind is favorable. It's like similar to that. Like you need to have some sense of direction in order to actually start getting somewhere, and that's something that I have seen like through the last months. I would say in my life, like there's a lot of there are a lot of cool things in having freedom to choose. But then if you have like infinite freedom, so to call it, then it's like you actually have no clear option to choose, and so
Yeah,
that ends up being like something negative in some way.
yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
it's really good. I would really suggest you read it. It's been my favorite book for like what, like 2 3 years. No, it was 2021. Wait, so it's like 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, because it's 2025. Yeah, I would like to start getting now into some questions I like to ask to like start wrapping up the
Yeah, for
show.
sure.
And like uh for the first one, like you can answer something that you have, like something recent or something from before and from your book. And so it is like, what is something that you have recently learned or discovered that is like valuable or insightful or interesting or whatever. Like it can be related to like any topic.
Um, one that's um, one book I really really liked recently. I probably read it like 2 years ago, but I've read it like three times already.
Hmm.
Because I really want to keep rereading it. It's a book called Wild Problems, and he talks about like there's like kind of like easy problems about like what should I eat for lunch today,
Hmm.
um, which is kind of like which is a a stupid basic one. But then there's also like simpler problems that are clear A or B. Like should I take this job or should I take that job? Like that's still a pretty straightforward kind of a decision. But like the wild problems is like the ones where there's no right answer. Like it's like should I quit physio and start doing marketing instead? Because or should I move to another country? Or um, should I marry this person? Yes or no? Is different even to like should I get married at all? Or
Hmm.
should I have kids at all? Where there's no real right answer, but it completely changes your whole life. Um, so that was a really good book, just around like reframing some of those decisions, and around what are the things that like there's no right answer. Both can be right in the end, depending on how you go about it. But so like sometimes taking that pressure off those bigger decisions, by going. I think that was a really good book, and I think maybe it's a good time for you as well.
Hmm.
You got some big decisions coming up about where to live and what to do next. It could be a good one to read.
Yeah, no, that's what I was gonna say. Because like this time of my life where I'm sort of like defining more my path than like the last time we
Mm.
talked. Because like last time it was like much broader. Right now it's a little
Yeah.
more like it has shrunk a little. But like yeah, I do understand like those type of problems, because it's like what I have recently been experiencing of like choosing what to do next, and it feels like is it the right path, or like, yeah, I guess like the usual or like the constant question is like, is this the right thing, where you don't really know how it will develop later on, and like, yeah, I guess that's interesting. In the book, how does the author frame like the idea of being right? Like, does it depend on like how you act, or like how you actually frame things, and what do you believe about things, or like, yeah, what does he say
Well,
about those things?
so he talks about like like the first thing people think of is like, okay, I'll do a pros and cons list. Okay, like the pros of the cons of uh, having a child, say, is like, okay, they cry a lot, they poo a lot, you don't sleep much, and then like the pros, it's like, oh, they're kind of cute, and maybe it's like someone to look after you when you're 80 years old, and like, but the what he says is like the problem with the pros and cons list for a wild problem that you've got. The problem is you've got no idea what even goes on the pros and cons list. So like
Mm-hmm.
there's things before you have a kid versus after you have a kid. There's things that you wouldn't even know were a possibility, or things you wouldn't even consider to put on the pros side or the cons side for that matter. Um, and like so he talks about there's another thing about vampires. This person's like before becoming a vampire versus becoming a vampire, like you don't even know the difference. Like when you're a vampire, you don't even know what it's like to be a human. When you're human, you don't know what it's like to be a vampire. So how could you possibly put these the pros and cons list together? Or like say about, okay, should I stay in my country or should I move to another country? Like the cons and the pros and cons you can think of now before you move are going to be totally different to after you move. Like after you move, you're going to find all these pros and also all these cons that you didn't even think about beforehand. So he was kind of like, the pros and cons list is like a good starting point, but also like doesn't help at all because you've got no idea what even goes on the pros and cons list.
Does he suggest anything like any alternative to that?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's three or four like key things that he focuses on, and one is definitely around flourishing and experience. So like what's going to give you the biggest, most richest life experience, I guess. So he's very pro most people having kids, with the understanding that not everybody should have kids, I guess. But like the things that you wouldn't even imagine were pros before having kids, is going to far outweigh any of the cons that you can imagine before having kids. And the same as like, completely changing your career or changing your, life path or moving to another country is going to open up so many more possibilities that you won't even imagine, versus the ones that are closed off, like the cons that you think of before are going to be far outweighed by the pros that come after, because you don't even know what the pros are to come. So his is definitely around like what's like the bigger, what like opens up more possibilities and what opens up to richer experiences is definitely one key decision factor.
What about so what we were talking about before, like having too many possibilities and too many options that you don't know which to pick. So like, what does he say, or like, what do you think about this in this sense? Like picking something that will give you like a lot of options or a lot of paths afterwards. Like, how might that be affected, or how might that negatively affect your life and your decisions by having like actually too many options instead of like a little list, a small list of high quality options.
Yeah. Well, I think ultimately my kind of thought is like whatever you do, you're probably going to make it work. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so there was one. I had a friend who was considering breaking up with her boyfriend, and she was really stressing about the situation because like she can obviously see the life with him, she could see the life without him, and didn't know what to do about it. I was like, I think like ultimately like you can stay with him and you're going to be happy and have a great life together, or you can break up and it's going to be hard at first, but ultimately you're going to be happy and have a great life without him, but with somebody else or doing somebody else or taking some different path. So I think like in that sense, it kind of like makes the decision a little bit easier knowing that like either way it's going to be hard. So like say the relationship it's going to be hard work to take 6 months to work through it and fix whatever problems are there. But on the other side, if you can go through that hard part, it's going to be good. But it's also
Hmm.
going to be hard to break up and start again from scratch. And, there's going to be lots of question marks and loneliness and worries and all these things. And it's going to be hard. But once you get through that on the other side, there's going to be happiness as well. So I think like ultimately, like it doesn't matter, which is a weird thing to say. But like
Yeah.
either way, it's going to end up good. They're going to end up very different, like extremely different. But either way, you can make it work.
Hmm.
So hopefully that like reduces some of the pressure. Like whatever path you take, like they're going to be completely different paths, but either way, it's going to be good.
Hmm. Yeah, and I guess like that really many times just comes to like choosing something and like committing to
Yeah,
it, which is another idea from Greenlight. So yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
another reason why you should read it.
yeah.
But like yeah, committing to something like actually gives you some space to enjoy it. Like
Definitely.
the space that would be taken by like uh having doubts and like regret and
Mm,
those things would be like taken away, and like there would be new space for like actually making the best out of that situation, which I mean it's obviously easy to say, but like it's not really an easy decision in the moment, because like you are stuck in this stress of like what you are gonna do and what you should do, but then like later on you see like okay, maybe it wasn't that bad.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Cool.
Love it.
Then the next question that I have is like, what's a book or a movie or a music album or something that you have like discovered lately that you have enjoyed?
Um, I really liked a book called Breakthrough Advertising. It
Mm-hmm.
was from like I don't know, like 60 years ago or something. And so it was super weird. Like some of the examples are really outdated. Some of the references are really outdated and not wouldn't fly in 2025. But I think the idea is actually more important than ever. So it's just around in marketing. A lot of people uh, people are unaware and then they know about you, then they're considering buying from you, and then they buy from you. Whereas this is
Mm-hmm.
like, man, there's so many more layers to that actual awareness. So like that awareness, it's not just like they don't know about you, now they do know about you. It's like they could know about the problem, they could know about your product, they could know about your company. But like, so there was like way more steps in between to take people along. So I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was really good, and it was a marketing book, but then also, I suppose, a way to communicate kind of any idea to people. So
Mm-hmm.
just it was like you could apply it more broadly to either business strategy or just like general communication stuff as well.
Do you have an example for like general communication?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I suppose so. It's kind of like the steps, and this is test me. So it's like completely unaware. They could be problem aware, so they know what the problem is. They could be solution aware, so they know how to fix it, and they could be product aware, so they know that to fix it, they need your product. And then
Mm-hmm.
completely aware, so they know everything about you. So I suppose it's like a lot of people don't are completely unaware. Even just like the first step is getting them to understand what the problem is. So like too often in marketing or in communication, we skip straight to like here use I've got the solution for you, but it's saying like the first step is just to get them to understand what the problem is.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I think that was just like a good one. Is like too often if we think we know the answer, we skip all the way to the end, but we need to take people on that journey as well. Of like,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, what's the problem that we're even talking about?
Yeah, I've got a friend who has been working on like marketing, but specifically like sales funnels for like
Yeah.
5 years or maybe more. But like he has shared with me like that uh, events and like webinars and these things are intended to be, yeah, like a space to sell the solution, but also like a way to teach people about a problem and the
Mm.
solution, and then offer the bridge between
He's probably read
between
this
the
book.
two. Maybe he has. I'm not sure if he's much of a reader, but yeah, maybe he has. And then the last thing is, so I told you that like my podcast is called Coffee Lounge, and so I like to ask, what's your favorite coffee? So whether that's like a coffee bean or a like method for preparing coffee or an actual like type of coffee. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I
I
just
like flat whites.
I just finished mine before.
And like, what's the what was like your go-to place to like drink coffee? Whether that's like just a situation, so like walking in the park and drinking coffee, or like an actual coffee shop or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely in the past it used to be um, coffee. So sitting at the cafe reading a book, that was definitely always my go-to.
Hmm.
Um, and I was less of a coffee snob, I guess, in that I was kind of happy with anything. Whereas now I'm a bit more snobby. I definitely. We only recently got a coffee machine at home because I
Hmm.
was always resistant because I was like, man, I've got a bit of an addictive personality. I could, if it's too easy to access, I could be going deep on coffee
Uh-huh.
content a day. But so my key was like, if I have to go somewhere to get it, I'm only going to go once, maybe twice a day at most, which is good. Whereas if it's in the house, I can have it all the time. So
Hmm.
it's in the house, but then now I'm like, okay, well, it's in the house because my wife really wanted it. I'm like, okay, well, as long as I don't know how to use it, then that's fine. I don't want to learn
Hmm.
because again, I don't want that access. But so
Hmm.
it's good that now that she's the one that makes the coffee, so every morning that's her job, which is good. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I think in terms of then, I think like walk in like a warmish morning with an iced almond latte, walking on the beach with a bit of sunshine. I
Hmm.
think that's probably the key at the moment.
Yeah, that sounds good. I
We're heading into winter though, so there's going to be
Oh yeah, yeah.
less of those opportunities coming up.
How's weather in your place when it's winter?
It's not too extreme. Like I feel like there's way colder winters. It's probably not too dissimilar to. Oh, you guys are probably a bit warmer. It definitely gets cold, but like it doesn't. There's no snow or like it's not
Mm-hmm.
freezing cold, but like it's low in terms of Celsius. It's like low single digits, but never below zero.
Oh, uh-huh. Yeah, because like here in Mexico City, it's always like year round. It's always almost the same. Just like in
Yeah,
winter, it's let's say like I don't know, like 6 or 7 degrees like Celsius like below, and then in summer it just goes up again. But it's very like stable throughout the year.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add to like regarding any topic that we talked about? Any other thing?
No, it was good to chat again because I think the last time we podcasted together was like probably what like 3 years ago maybe.
Yes, it was maybe 2022, I think.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I'm not really sure if it was 2021 or 2022, but it
Yeah,
was like some time ago.
yeah. So it's good to catch up again, man.
It was, yeah.